General Morrison stood in the command center, coordinating the largest military operation in human history. Every screen showed a different battle. Every radio channel carried desperate calls for support. The alien invasion was hitting every continent at once, and human forces were struggling to hold the line. "All units, this is Central Command," Morrison spoke into his headset. "Your primary objective is to protect the designated installations. Fight defensive. Buy us time. 4 hours. That's all we need." In the skies above Los Angeles, Major Lisa Chen pushed her fighter jet to its limits. She led a squadron of 12 aircraft against an alien formation 3 times their size. The odds were terrible, but retreating wasn't an option. Below them, millions of people were evacuating the city. Someone had to slow the aliens down. "Red Squadron, break formation," Lisa commanded. "Spread out and engage. Make them chase us." Her pilots responded immediately, scattering in different directions. The alien fighters followed, dividing their attention. Lisa rolled her aircraft and fired missiles at the nearest enemy ship. The missiles impacted against an invisible barrier around the alien craft. The shields glowed bright blue for a moment, then faded. The ship kept flying undamaged. "Shields are holding strong," her wingman called out. "Our weapons aren't getting through." Lisa gritted her teeth. "Keep firing. Even if we can't destroy them, we can slow them down. That's enough." She dove toward the city, the alien fighter following close behind. Energy beams flashed past her canopy, close enough that she could feel the heat. She weaved between buildings, using the urban landscape as cover. The alien pilot was good, staying right on her tail. But Lisa had trained in these skies her entire career. She knew every street, every landmark. She led the alien fighter through a narrow gap between 2 skyscrapers, then pulled up hard. The alien ship followed, but wasn't quite fast enough. It clipped the edge of a building, and its shields flared bright. For just a moment, they flickered. Lisa saw her chance and fired everything she had. Her guns tore into the weakened shields, and finally one bullet made it through. The alien ship exploded in a ball of fire. 1 down, hundreds to go. Back in the Nevada facility, Helen worked frantically at her console. She had established contact with 6 of the 7 Sentinel operators. Commander Greg Foster in Antarctica, Professor Amy Wallace in Scotland, Dr. Victor Kane in Brazil, and 3 others scattered across the globe. They were all ready to begin the activation sequence. "We're missing the Atlantic node," Helen said to Dr. Paul Martinez, who worked beside her. "I can't reach the operator there." Paul checked his screens. "The facility is under heavy attack. Communication systems might be damaged. We need that node, Helen. The system won't work with only 6. Helen felt a wave of frustration. Everything depended on this moment, and they were 1 step away from failure. She switched to a different frequency, trying emergency channels. Static filled her headset. Then finally a voice broke through. "This is Atlantic Node. We're still here, barely." Relief flooded through Helen. "This is Dr. Brooks at Central Command. We're beginning activation sequence now. Stand by for synchronized input." Around the world, 7 operators prepared to enter their codes. The activation had to happen at exactly the same moment, or the system wouldn't initialize properly. Helen looked at the countdown clock on her screen. 3 minutes until synchronization. President Marshall addressed the world from the White House. Every television, every radio, every internet stream carried her message. She spoke directly to the camera, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding outside. "People of Earth, this is President Linda Marshall. I need to tell you the truth about something that has been kept secret for many years. In 1952, an alien probe crashed in New Mexico. We recovered it and studied its technology. What we learned allowed us to build a defense system, one designed specifically to protect our planet from invasion." She paused, letting the words sink in. Around the world, people in bunkers and shelters watched in stunned silence. "This system is called Project Sentinel. It has been hidden, waiting for the day we would need it. That day has come. Our military forces are fighting bravely to protect the Sentinel installations while they activate. In approximately 4 hours, we will be able to strike back against the invaders. Until then, I ask for your courage and your faith. Humanity has faced extinction before. We have always survived. We will survive this too." The alien commander watched the broadcast from the bridge of the flagship. The massive vessel hung in orbit above the Atlantic Ocean, coordinating the invasion fleet. When the human leader mentioned their defense system, the alien's expression changed. It had not expected this. Humanity was supposed to be primitive, defenseless, but they had prepared. The commander issued new orders. The invasion fleet changed tactics immediately. Ships that had been focused on attacking cities now redirected toward specific targets: weather stations, communication towers, research facilities. The locations matched data in their intelligence files. Places that seemed innocent but registered unusual energy signatures. The aliens had been watching Earth for decades. They had not expected the humans to be watching back, learning from what they found. Jake coordinated the defense of the Atlantic Sentinel installation from the bridge of the USS Valiant. The facility was built beneath an artificial island, disguised as an oil platform. His battle group surrounded it, creating a defensive perimeter. 6 destroyers, 3 cruisers, and the carrier itself. It wasn't much against the alien force descending from above. "Incoming fighters," the radar officer called out. 30 contacts, closing fast. "Launch all aircraft," Jake ordered. "Engage at maximum range. Keep them away from the platform." Fighter jets screamed off the carrier deck, racing to intercept the alien craft. Behind them, the ships opened fire with everything they had. Missiles streaked skyward, gun turrets tracked targets. The ocean lit up with explosions and tracer fire. An alien beam weapon hit one of the destroyers. The ship's armor melted like butter. Explosions rippled along its hull as ammunition cooked off. The vessel listed to one side and began sinking. Jake watched it go down, knowing that hundreds of sailors were going with it. He had trained with some of those men and women. Had eaten meals with them. Now they were gone. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," he commanded. "Don't give them an easy target." The battle group scattered, each ship moving independently while maintaining their protective formation around the platform. It was a desperate strategy, but staying still meant death. The alien fighters were fast and accurate. They worked in perfect coordination, as if they shared a single mind. In Scotland, Professor Amy Wallace entered her codes into the Sentinel console. The facility was built inside an old castle, hidden beneath centuries of stone. Outside, British military forces fought to hold back an alien ground assault. She could hear explosions echoing through the walls, feel the building shake with each impact. Her hands trembled as she worked. One mistake, one wrong number, and the entire system would fail. She forced herself to stay calm, to focus on the task. The fate of billions depended on getting this right. "Code entered," she reported. "Standing by." Helen heard the confirmation and checked her list. All 7 nodes were ready. The synchronization window was open. This was it. "All operators enter final authorization on my mark," she said. 3, 2, 1 mark. 7 fingers pressed 7 buttons at exactly the same moment. Deep beneath the Earth's surface, in hidden chambers scattered across the globe, ancient alien technology merged with human engineering came to life. Power surged through cables. Generators that had waited silent for decades began to hum. The Sentinel system was waking up, but it wasn't ready yet. The initial activation was just the first step. The weapons still needed time to charge, to calibrate, to prepare their targeting systems. Helen watched the progress bars on her screen crawl forward. 90 minutes until the system could fire. 90 minutes might as well have been forever. Above Los Angeles, Lisa's fuel gauge was reading dangerously low. She had been in the air for nearly an hour, fighting continuously. Her squadron had started with 12 fighters. Now only 5 remained. But they had accomplished their mission. The alien assault on the city had slowed. Evacuation convoys were getting out, moving inland where the aliens couldn't reach them as easily. "Red Leader, this is command," a voice crackled in her helmet. "RTB for refuel and rearm. Fresh squadrons are taking over your position." Lisa acknowledged the order and turned her fighter toward base. As she flew, she looked down at the city below. Smoke rose from dozens of fires. Buildings stood damaged or destroyed. But it was still there. Los Angeles still existed. They had bought the time they needed. She just hoped it would be enough. Helen watched the final countdown on her screen. The numbers decreased one by one, each second feeling like an hour. Around her, the command center was completely silent. Every person in the room held their breath, waiting to see if Project Sentinel would actually work. 10 seconds. 9. 8. She thought about all the years of preparation. The testing, the calculations, the simulations. They had never been able to fire the system at full power. Never been able to test it against real alien technology. Everything was based on theory and hope. 3, 2, 1. Authorization code accepted, Paul said beside her. Firing sequence initiated. Helen typed her final command and pressed enter. All stations, this is Central Command. You are authorized to fire. Across the planet, 7 primary installations revealed their true nature. In Nevada, panels slid away from what had appeared to be a radio telescope. In Antarctica, ice cracked and fell as a massive weapon rose from beneath the frozen ground. In Scotland, Amy Wallace's castle suddenly bristled with technology that belonged in science fiction, not medieval history. The weapons charged with a sound like thunder rolling across the sky. Energy built up in their cores, drawn from reactors that used principles human scientists were only beginning to understand. The air around each installation shimmered with heat and power. Then they fired. Beams of pure energy lanced upward from 7 locations. They were brilliant white, so bright that people had to look away. The beams punched through the atmosphere in less than a second and reached the alien ships in orbit. When they hit, the shields of the alien vessels flared and collapsed. The ships that took direct hits simply exploded, torn apart by weapons designed specifically to counter their defenses. From her fighter cockpit, Lisa saw the first beam fire from the Nevada facility. It lit up the entire western sky like a second sun. The alien ships that had been attacking Los Angeles suddenly found themselves under fire from below. 3 vessels exploded in rapid succession. The others scattered, their formation breaking apart in confusion. Holy! Her wingman breathed over the radio. Did you see that? I saw it, Lisa replied, allowing herself a smile. Command, this is Red Leader. The aliens are falling back. Repeat, the aliens are falling back. In the Atlantic Ocean, Jake watched as another beam rose from the installation his battle group had been protecting. It climbed through the clouds and struck an alien carrier hovering 10 miles overhead. The massive ship's shields flickered, failed, and the beam cut through its hull like a knife through paper. The carrier broke in half, both sections tumbling toward the ocean in flames. Target destroyed, Jake's tactical officer reported, his voice filled with disbelief. Sir, the weapon is recharging for another shot. Jake allowed himself a moment of relief. They had held the line. The installation had survived long enough to fire. But the battle wasn't over. More alien ships were approaching, and his battle group had taken heavy damage. 2 destroyers were gone. The carrier had multiple hull breaches. They couldn't last much longer. All ships maintain defensive positions, he ordered. We protect that platform until the last ship goes down. President Marshall watched the global tactical display in the White House Situation Room. The red icons representing alien ships were finally starting to disappear. The Sentinel weapons were working better than anyone had dared to hope. But the aliens were adapting quickly. They're changing their shield frequencies, General Morrison reported. The second volley isn't as effective as the first. Helen was already working on the problem. She pulled up data from the alien ships they had destroyed. Analyzing the shield technology, the aliens modulated their defenses in real time, adjusting to counter the Sentinel weapons. But that meant the shields were weaker overall. They couldn't defend against everything at once. I'm uploading new targeting parameters, she said. The Sentinel weapons will cycle through multiple frequencies. The aliens won't be able to adapt fast enough. She sent the update to all 7 nodes. The weapons adjusted and the next volley proved much more effective. Alien ships that had survived the first attacks found their shields overwhelmed by the second. But even as they died, they were learning. The alien fleet was massive and they were sharing data across their entire network. It became a technological arms race happening at the speed of thought. Helen modified the Sentinel systems. The aliens adapted their shields. She modified again. They adapted again. Back and forth, each side trying to gain an advantage. Meanwhile, General Morrison coordinated with ground forces around the world. The Sentinel weapons had given them a crucial advantage, but there were still alien forces on the ground. Landing parties had been deployed before the defense system activated. They had to be dealt with separately. In the streets of Mumbai, soldiers fought alien troops in brutal close combat. The aliens were stronger and faster than humans, but they weren't invincible. Bullets still hurt them. Explosives still worked. The fighting was desperate and costly, but humans were holding their own. Major Lisa Chen landed her fighter at a temporary base outside Los Angeles. As ground crews rushed to refuel and rearm her aircraft, she received new orders. The Sentinel system needed aerial support. The weapons were powerful but slow to retarget. Fighter jets could protect them from the smaller, faster alien craft. "All pilots, listen up," Lisa addressed her squadron. "We're being equipped with new missiles. They're linked to the Sentinel targeting system. When we fire, the ground-based weapons fire too. We create a crossfire that the aliens can't dodge." Her pilots looked exhausted but determined. They had been fighting for hours, watching friends die, seeing their world burn. But now they had a weapon that actually worked. Now they had hope. Lisa climbed back into her cockpit and took off again. This time she carried missiles with green stripes, marking them as Sentinel integrated weapons. She led her squadron toward a group of alien ships attacking the Nevada installation. The ground-based weapons were powerful, but they couldn't cover every angle. That's where the fighters came in. "Target lock acquired," Lisa said. "Firing." She released her missiles at the same moment the Nevada installation fired its main weapon. The missiles streaked toward the alien ships from one angle while the energy beam came from another. The aliens tried to dodge, but they couldn't avoid both attacks. Their shields collapsed under the combined assault. 3 ships exploded. The others retreated, unable to press their attack. "It works," Lisa laughed with relief. "It actually works." Jake's battle group continued defending the Atlantic installation. The platform fired again, destroying another alien carrier. But the cost was high. A 3rd destroyer had been sunk. The USS Valiant had taken multiple hits. Fires burned on 3 decks. Half the carrier's aircraft were destroyed. The crew worked desperately to keep the ship operational. An alien fighter dove toward the platform, trying to kamikaze into the installation. Jake's gunners opened fire, their tracers filling the sky. The alien ship took hits but kept coming. It was going to make it through. The platform would be destroyed, and all their sacrifice would mean nothing. Then a missile streaked from one of the cruisers and caught the alien fighter directly. The ship exploded 100 feet above the platform. Debris rained down, causing damage but not destroying the installation. Jake released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Nice shot," he radioed to the cruiser. "One more time. The platform is charging for another strike." The crew of the cruiser didn't respond. Jake checked his tactical display and felt his heart sink. The ship was listing badly, taking on water. The missile had been their last one. They had given everything they had left. Around the world, the pattern repeated. Human forces sacrificed themselves to protect the Sentinel installations. Soldiers held impossible positions. Pilots flew missions with no hope of return. Ships stayed in battle long after they should have retreated. Every person understood that if the installations fell, humanity fell with them. Helen monitored the global situation from her command center. The Sentinel system was functioning, but the aliens weren't giving up. They were probing for weaknesses, testing different tactics. She realized something important. The alien ships were all connected somehow, sharing information instantly. That made them coordinated, but it also made them predictable. She pulled up data on alien ship movements and started looking for patterns. There had to be a central command structure, something controlling the fleet. If they could find it and destroy it, the entire invasion might collapse. "Paul, I need you to analyze these movement patterns," she said. "Look for ships that other ships respond to. Find me the command vessels." Paul worked quickly, running the data through analysis programs. After 10 minutes, he had an answer. There are 7 large ships in the fleet. All the other vessels orient their movements around these 7. They're the flagships. If we take them out, the rest might fall into disarray. Helen felt a surge of excitement. That was it. That was how they could win. She immediately contacted President Marshall with the plan. "We need to coordinate a simultaneous strike on all 7 flagships," Helen explained. "If we hit them at the same time, the aliens won't be able to warn each other or adapt their defenses." Linda listened to the proposal, understanding the risk. If they committed all their forces to this attack and failed. The morning started like any other at the Cheyenne Mountain Complex in Colorado. Colonel Danny Harper sat at his desk, drinking his 3rd cup of coffee and reviewing routine reports. The underground facility hummed with its usual activity. Technicians monitored screens, officers walked through corridors, and everything seemed perfectly normal. Then every alarm in the building started screaming at once. Danny jumped from his chair and ran to the main control room. The massive screens on the wall showed something impossible. Thousands of red dots filled the display, each one representing an object in space. They had appeared from behind the moon, suddenly visible to every telescope, satellite, and radar system on Earth. Sir, we have multiple contacts, Lieutenant Karen Stevens said, her voice shaking. They're not ours. They're not from any country on Earth. Danny stared at the screen. The objects were moving into formation, spreading across space like a net closing around the planet. He had trained for many scenarios during his military career, but this was something else entirely. His hands felt cold. Get me the president, he said quietly. Right now. Across the country in Washington, President Linda Marshall was in a meeting when her chief of staff burst through the door. The look on his face told her everything she needed to know. Something terrible had happened. She followed him to the Situation Room where military advisors were already gathering. General Frank Morrison stood at the head of the table, his face grim. Madam President, we have a situation. An alien fleet has appeared in Earth's orbit. We count approximately 3,000 vessels. They are positioning themselves above major cities worldwide. Linda felt her stomach drop. She had been briefed on many threats during her time in office. Terrorism, nuclear war, cyber attacks. But this was beyond anything in the playbooks. She looked around the room at the faces of her advisors. They all looked as shocked as she felt. What are our options? She asked. Limited, Morrison replied. Our weapons were designed to fight other humans, not alien technology. We're analyzing their ships now. But initial reports suggest they have shielding systems far beyond our current capabilities. On the screens behind him, satellite images showed the alien vessels. They were massive, dark shapes that seemed to absorb light. Their design was unlike anything human engineers had ever conceived. Smooth, organic curves mixed with harsh angles. They looked alive and dead at the same time. In Nevada, deep beneath the desert, Dr. Helen Brooks was working in her laboratory when her computer screen flashed red. A message appeared, one she had hoped she would never see. The words were simple but carried enormous weight. Protocol Sentinel activated. Report to command immediately. Helen stared at the screen for a long moment. 15 years. She had spent 15 years preparing for this message. Part of her had believed it would never come, that the threat was theoretical, that humanity would live in peace, never knowing about the defense system hidden beneath their feet. She was wrong. Helen grabbed her security badge and ran through the corridors. Other scientists looked at her curiously as she rushed past. They didn't know what she knew. They didn't understand that everything was about to change. She reached the elevator and pressed her badge against a hidden panel. The elevator descended, going far deeper than the official levels of the facility. When the doors opened, she stepped into a command center that very few people knew existed. Screens covered every wall, showing data streams and satellite feeds. In the center of the room stood a control console that looked decades ahead of normal technology. Because it was. It had been built using knowledge that didn't come from Earth. Meanwhile, in the Pacific Ocean, Captain Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of the USS Valiant. The aircraft carrier was on routine patrol when the alert came through. All ships were ordered to battle stations. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, but Jake could see the confusion in their eyes. Battle stations for what? There was no enemy fleet nearby. No hostile nation had declared war. Then he saw the sky. Dark shapes descended through the clouds, moving faster than any aircraft he had ever seen. They were sleek and menacing, cutting through the air with impossible grace. Jake grabbed his binoculars and focused on the nearest craft. It was alien. There was no other word for it. The design was completely foreign, built by minds that didn't think like humans. All aircraft prepare for launch, he ordered. Weapons free. Engage any hostile targets. The first alien craft opened fire. Beams of bright energy lanced down from the sky, hitting the water near the carrier. Massive columns of steam rose where the ocean boiled. Jake felt the ship shudder as the shockwave hit. This was real. They were under attack. Around the world, the same scene played out. In Tokyo, people looked up to see alien fighters screaming overhead. In Sydney, entire city blocks were evacuated as massive alien ships hovered above. In Mumbai, air raid sirens wailed for the first time in decades. The invasion had begun. Human fighter jets scrambled to intercept the alien craft. Missiles launched, guns fired, but the results were devastating. The alien ships had shields that deflected or absorbed the attacks. Human weapons barely scratched them. Meanwhile, alien weapons were terrifyingly effective. Jets exploded in midair. Tanks melted under energy beams. Ships sank beneath waves churned by alien fire. Helen reached the White House through a network of secret underground tunnels. She was escorted directly to the Situation Room, where President Marshall and her advisors were watching the global assault unfold. Cities were burning. Military forces were being overwhelmed. The reports coming in were all bad. "Dr. Brooks," Linda said, turning to face her. "Tell me you have good news." Helen took a deep breath. "Madam President, I need to brief you on Project Sentinel. It's a defense system that has been kept secret for 73 years. We built it using technology recovered from an alien probe that crashed in 1952. The system was designed specifically for this scenario." The room fell silent. Everyone stared at her. "We have a weapon?" Morrison asked. "We have a network of weapons," Helen replied. "Hidden installations around the world. They've been disguised as communication towers, weather stations, research facilities, 7 primary nodes and hundreds of secondary positions. The technology is based on the same principles as the alien ships. It can hurt them." Linda felt a spark of hope for the first time since the crisis began. "How long until it's operational?" "The activation sequence takes 4 hours," Helen said. "We need simultaneous input from all 7 primary locations. Once activated, the system can target alien vessels in orbit and in atmosphere." 4 hours, Morrison said. "We need to hold them off for 4 hours." Linda looked at the screens showing the battles raging across the planet. 4 hours seemed like an eternity, but it was the only chance they had. "Do it," she ordered. "Activate Project Sentinel. And General Morrison, I need you to buy Dr. Brooks those 4 hours. Whatever it takes." Morrison nodded. He began issuing orders, coordinating a global defense effort. Every military unit on Earth would fight to protect the Sentinel installations. They would sacrifice everything to give humanity this one chance. Helen sat down at a communications console and began contacting the other Sentinel operators around the world. They had trained for this. They knew their roles. But knowing something in theory and facing the reality were very different things. Outside, the sky burned as humanity fought for its survival. Operation Broken Chain required perfect timing across 12 time zones and 7 theaters of war. Helen coordinated from the Nevada Command Center, her screen showing the positions of all 7 alien flagships. Each one was massive, 3 times the size of any other vessel in the invasion fleet. They hung in orbit or hovered in the atmosphere, directing the attacks on Earth below. "All stations, this is Central Command." Helen spoke into her headset. "We have identified the enemy command structure. 7 flagships coordinating the entire fleet. We will strike all 7 simultaneously in exactly 2 hours. Synchronization is critical. If even one flagship survives, the operation fails." General Morrison coordinated the military response. Every available unit would participate in the assault. Ground-based Sentinel weapons would target the flagships in orbit. Fighter squadrons would attack the flagships in atmosphere. Naval forces would engage the flagship over the Atlantic. It was humanity's largest coordinated offensive in history. Major Lisa Chen received her briefing at the temporary base outside Los Angeles. Her target was the flagship hovering over the Pacific Ocean, directing the attacks on the West Coast. The ship was enormous, nearly 2 miles long. It bristled with weapons and had shields strong enough to withstand multiple Sentinel strikes. "Your job is to weaken the shields," the briefing officer explained. "Hit them with everything you have. When the shields are at their weakest point, the Nevada installation will fire its main weapon. The combined assault should be enough to destroy the flagship." Lisa looked at the tactical display. The flagship was surrounded by smaller escort ships. Getting close enough to attack would be suicide, but someone had to do it. "I'll need volunteers," she said. "This is a one-way mission for most of us. I won't order anyone to come." Every pilot in the room raised their hand. Lisa felt a lump in her throat. These were good people, brave people. Many of them wouldn't survive the next 2 hours, but they were willing to try because the alternative was extinction. "Gear up," she said. "We launch in 90 minutes. In the Atlantic Ocean, Jake stood on what remained of the USS Valiant's bridge. The carrier was barely floating. Engineering teams had patched the hull breaches with whatever they could find. Pumps worked constantly to keep water out. Half the ship's systems were offline. But the flight deck was still operational, and that was all that mattered. "Sir, we've received our target assignment," his executive officer said. "The flagship over the Atlantic. We're to engage at the same time as the other attacks." Jake looked at what remained of his battle group. 2 destroyers, 1 cruiser, and the damaged carrier. Against a ship that could probably destroy all of them with a single shot. The odds were impossible. "Signal all ships," Jake said. "Prepare for final attack run." Tell the crew what we're doing. They deserve to know. Word spread quickly through the fleet. Sailors understood they were about to attack the alien command ship. Many of them wrote quick letters to loved ones knowing they might not survive. But not one person suggested retreating. They had come too far, lost too many friends to give up now. President Marshall addressed the nation one more time. Her face showed the exhaustion of 18 hours of constant crisis, but her voice remained strong. In 1 hour, we will launch a coordinated attack on the alien command ships, she said. This operation represents our best chance to end the invasion. I won't lie to you. Many brave men and women will die in the attempt, but their sacrifice will not be in vain. We fight not just for our own survival, but for the future of our species, for our children and grandchildren, for everyone who will come after us. She paused, looking directly into the camera. To the military personnel about to go into battle, you carry the hopes of 8 billion people. We are all counting on you. Come home safe if you can. But if you can't, know that your names will be remembered forever. You are heroes, every single one of you. Around the world, people watched the broadcast in bunkers and shelters. They held their loved ones close. They prayed to whatever gods they believed in. And they waited to see if humanity would survive the next hour. Helen made final adjustments to the Sentinel targeting systems. Each flagship would be engaged by multiple weapons simultaneously. The Nevada installation would target the Pacific flagship. The Antarctic station would hit the flagship over Asia. Scotland would take the European target. The pattern repeated across all 7 nodes. All operators run final system checks, she ordered. We get one shot at this. Everything has to work perfectly. Reports came back one by one. All systems green. All weapons charged. All personnel ready. Helen felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. If her calculations were wrong, if she had missed something, billions would die. But she had checked everything 3 times. The math was solid. The plan would work. It had to work. Lisa took off from the base, leading a formation of 48 fighters. It was everything the West Coast could spare. They flew low over the ocean, trying to avoid detection as long as possible. The Pacific flagship grew larger on the horizon, a dark mass blocking out the sky. All aircraft, this is Red Leader. Lisa said, arm all weapons. We're going in. The alien escorts detected them and moved to intercept. Energy beams flashed through the air. 2 fighters exploded immediately. Then 4 more. Lisa gritted her teeth and pushed forward. They had to get through. Had to reach the flagship, break and attack, she commanded. Hit the escorts first. Clear a path. The fighter formation split up, engaging the escort ships in desperate dogfights. Missiles streaked through the sky. Guns rattled. More fighters fell. But they were taking enemies with them. Slowly, painfully, they carved a path toward the flagship. Lisa dove toward the massive ship, releasing her missiles when she was almost on top of it. The weapons impacted against shields that glowed bright blue. Other fighters followed her example, hitting the flagship from every angle. The shields held, but they were weakening. Energy readings flickered as the defensive system strained. In the Atlantic, Jake's battle group made their attack run. The destroyers went first, firing every missile they had. The flagship's shields absorbed the attacks easily, but that was okay. They were just the opening move. The cruiser followed, getting in close and hitting the flagship with its main guns at point-blank range. The alien ship returned fire. Energy beams cut through the cruiser like it was made of paper. The ship exploded in a massive fireball. Jake watched good people die, but he couldn't stop. The Valiant kept moving forward, launching its remaining aircraft. The fighters swarmed the flagship, adding their weapons to the assault. Helen watched the countdown clock. 30 seconds until synchronized strike. All across the globe, human forces were engaging the flagships. Reports flooded in. Casualties were heavy. But the shields on the command ships were weakening. The plan was working. 15 seconds, Paul called out. Helen's finger hovered over the firing button. This was it. Everything came down to this moment. 10 seconds. Lisa pulled up hard, barely avoiding an energy beam that vaporized the fighter behind her. Only 20 of her original 48 aircraft remained, but the flagship's shields were at 30% power, just a little more. 5 seconds. Jake ordered full speed ahead. The Valiant charged directly at the flagship, all guns firing. It was insane. It was suicide. But it was keeping the alien ship focused on them instead of the installation behind them. 3, 2, 1. Fire, Helen said. 7. Sentinel installations fired simultaneously. 7 beams of pure energy streaked upward, each one targeting a different flagship. At the same moment, human forces around those flagships unleashed everything they had. The combined assault overwhelmed the alien shields. 5 flagships exploded instantly, torn apart by concentrated fire. The 6th flagship, the one over Europe, tried to retreat but was caught by a second Sentinel beam. It broke apart in the upper atmosphere, pieces raining down over the Mediterranean. The 7th flagship, the one over the Atlantic that Jake was attacking, took the hit but survived. Its shields collapsed completely, but the hull held. For a moment, it seemed like the operation had failed. Then Lisa's squadron hit it from above. Her missiles, fired at the exact moment the shields went down, punched through the flagship's armor. Secondary explosions rippled along the alien ship's hull. It began to list to one side, systems failing. Jake didn't hesitate. The Valiant, battered and burning, rammed into the flagship's side. The carrier's bow crumpled on impact, but the collision was enough. The flagship's damaged systems overloaded. It exploded in a blast that could be seen from orbit. Jake and most of his crew evacuated in lifeboats seconds before the impact. They watched from the water as both ships went down together, the Valiant and the flagship, locked in a final embrace. The moment the last flagship exploded, the alien fleet fell into chaos. Ships that had moved with perfect coordination suddenly seemed confused. They broke formation, some trying to continue their attacks while others attempted to retreat. Without their command structure, the invasion force had no direction. Helen watched the change on her tactical displays. The organized assault had become scattered confusion. Individual alien ships were still dangerous, but they were no longer working as a unified force. Operation Broken Chain had succeeded. All Sentinel stations continue firing, she ordered. Target ships attempting to retreat. Don't let them escape to warn others of their kind. The 7 primary installations and hundreds of secondary weapons went to work. Energy beams lanced through the sky, picking off alien vessels one by one. Fighter squadrons hunted down the smaller craft. Ground forces mopped up the remaining landing parties. What had been an invasion was now a rout. General Morrison coordinated the final phase of the battle. After 18 hours of desperate defense, human forces were finally on the offensive. Every military unit on Earth pushed forward, eliminating alien resistance wherever they found it. "We're receiving surrender signals from multiple alien vessels," an officer reported. "They're requesting terms." Morrison looked at President Marshall, who had remained in the Situation Room throughout the entire crisis. She looked exhausted but relieved. "Accept their surrender," Linda said. "Any ship that powers down weapons and submits to boarding will be spared. But make it clear that any continued resistance will be met with immediate destruction." The message was broadcast on all frequencies. Within an hour, over 200 alien ships had surrendered. Others tried to flee into deep space. But the Sentinel system's range extended well beyond Earth's orbit. Few escaped. Major Lisa Chen brought her fighter in for landing. Her aircraft was riddled with holes from near misses. One engine was barely working. But she was alive and she was home. As she climbed out of the cockpit, ground crew members rushed forward to help her. They were cheering, crying, celebrating. "The battle was won. How many?" Lisa asked her executive officer, dreading the answer. "From your squadron?" 8 aircraft made it back. From the entire West Coast Air Forces, about 20% survived. Lisa felt the weight of those losses. 80% dead. Hundreds of pilots who had flown into battle knowing they probably wouldn't return. But their sacrifice had saved millions of civilians. The Pacific flagship was destroyed. The West Coast was safe. She walked to the squadron ready room and sat down heavily in a chair. Her hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was wearing off. She had been flying for nearly 20 hours straight. Her body hurt everywhere, but she was alive. Other pilots trickled in, the survivors of the greatest aerial battle in history. They didn't talk much. Words seemed inadequate. They just sat together, sharing the silence of people who had seen things no one should have to see. In the Atlantic Ocean, rescue ships pulled Jake Sullivan from the water. He was bruised and exhausted but alive. Most of his crew had made it to the lifeboats before the Valiant went down. The destroyers picked them up, fishing cold and shocked sailors from the waves. Jake watched the spot where his ship had disappeared. The carrier had been his home for 3 years. He had commanded good people there, lost good people there. The Valiant was gone, but it had taken an alien flagship with it. That had to count for something. "Sir, message from Fleet Command," a sailor said, handing him a radio. "The President wants to speak with you." Jake took the radio, surprised. "This is Captain Sullivan." "Captain, this is President Marshall," Linda's voice came through. "I wanted to personally thank you for your service. Your actions saved millions of lives. The Atlantic installation survived because of you and your crew." "We were just doing our job, ma'am," Jake replied. "You did much more than that. You're a hero, Captain Sullivan. All of you are." After the call ended, Jake looked at his surviving crew members. They didn't look like heroes. They looked like tired, scared people who had somehow survived something terrible. But maybe that was what heroes actually looked like. Helen stood in the Nevada Command Center, watching the final alien ships being destroyed or captured. The Sentinel system had performed beyond all expectations. The 73 years of secrecy, the decades of preparation, had all been worth it. "We did it," Paul said beside her, smiling. "We did it," Helen agreed. "Earth is safe." But even as she said it, she knew that nothing would ever be the same. The secret was out. The world now knew that aliens existed, that Earth had been watched, that invasion was a real threat. Humanity could never go back to the innocence of not knowing they were not alone in the universe. The casualties became clear in the following days. Major cities had been damaged or destroyed. Millions had died in the initial attacks and the fighting that followed. But billions had survived. Earth was battered but standing. President Marshall addressed the United Nations Assembly. The building in New York had been destroyed, so they met in Geneva instead. Representatives from every nation sat together, united by their shared experience. "We faced extinction together," Linda said, "and we survived together, not as separate nations but as one species with one purpose. The divisions that seemed so important before the invasion now seem trivial. We know what truly matters. We know what we're capable of when we work as one." She paused, looking out at the assembled leaders. "Project Sentinel saved our civilization, but more importantly, the courage and sacrifice of ordinary people saved us. Soldiers who held impossible positions, pilots who flew into certain death, sailors who gave everything to protect others, and civilians who kept functioning even as their world burned around them. They are the real heroes of this story." The assembly rose in a standing ovation that lasted for 5 minutes. In the months that followed, Earth began to rebuild. The Sentinel installations remained active, upgraded with technology salvaged from captured alien vessels. New defense systems were built based on what they had learned. Humanity was preparing for the next threat, whenever it might come. Helen was appointed director of the newly formed Planetary Defense Initiative. Her first task was to analyze the captured alien ships and understand their technology. The aliens had come from somewhere. They had to assume others would eventually follow. Lisa Chen was promoted and assigned to train the next generation of pilots. She taught them the lessons learned from the invasion. Not just tactics and strategy, but the importance of sacrifice, of courage, of doing your duty even when victory seems impossible. Jake received a new command, the first ship built with hybrid human-alien technology. The vessel combined the best of both worlds, more powerful than anything humanity had built before. It would be the flagship of Earth's new space defense fleet. One evening, 6 months after the invasion, Helen stood outside the Nevada facility looking up at the stars. Construction crews were building humanity's first deep space monitoring station in orbit. Soon, Earth would have eyes throughout the solar system. They would see any threat coming long before it arrived. Paul joined her, following her gaze upward. "Do you think they'll come back?" he asked. "The aliens or others like them?" "Probably," Helen said. "The universe is a big place. We can't be the only valuable planet. But now we're ready. We're not helpless anymore." "We never were helpless," Paul said. "We just didn't know it yet." Helen smiled at that. He was right. Humanity had always had the capacity for greatness. The invasion had simply forced them to discover it. Around the world, life slowly returned to normal. Cities were rebuilt. Economies recovered. People went back to work, to school, to their daily routines. But everything had changed in subtle ways. There was less conflict between nations, more cooperation, more focus on common goals. Children who had lived through the invasion grew up knowing that Earth was not alone. They looked at the stars with different eyes, seeing both opportunity and danger. Many of them dreamed of becoming defenders, of standing guard against future threats. In rebuilt Tokyo, a young girl stood on her apartment balcony at night. Above her, lights moved across the sky. Not alien ships this time, but human construction crews working on the orbital defense platform. She watched them work, marveling at what people could build when they worked together. Her mother joined her on the balcony, putting an arm around her shoulders. "What are you thinking about?" her mother asked. "About the future," the girl replied. "About going up there someday. About protecting Earth like the heroes did." Her mother smiled. That was the gift the invasion had given them. Fear, yes, but also purpose. Humanity knew now that they were part of something larger. They were not alone, and they would never be unprepared again. President Marshall's term ended 2 years after the invasion. In her farewell address, she spoke about the lessons learned from Earth's darkest hours. "We discovered that when pushed to the edge of extinction, humanity does not break," she said. "We bend, we adapt, we fight back. We discovered that the things that divide us are nothing compared to what unites us. And we discovered that the greatest weapon we possess is not any technology or any system. It's the courage of ordinary people willing to do extraordinary things." She paused, looking out at the crowd gathered to hear her speak.